All right, everyone, welcome back into another video. In this video, I will be breaking down the 9to5 membership, showing you guys all the tools and how to use those to become a better fantasy sports player. Let's go ahead and get into it. So I want to start out with the 9to5 homepage, okay? Obviously, pricing and plans, that's where you're going to go to be able to sign up for the membership plan. So I do have a breakdown of everything that is offered in there, okay? So I want you guys to know that this is comprised of really two tiers of membership. Fantasy golf, which is everything that's included in here. And then we also have the PrizePicks tools as well, which are going to be down here as well. Okay, this is something I'm always trying to update here. So now, like, I need to put in PGA in there because I just created a PGA tool, but it has the NBA cheat sheet, NHL, college basketball, MLB. Also has NFL in there as well. Obviously, NFL is not going on right now as I'm recording this, but it's going to offer you these cheat sheets for all those various sports plus others. It's going to have discrepancies in there for MMA, tennis, esports, and whatnot. But that's going to be for Underdog and PrizePick. And I'll show you guys how to use that tool in just a second. But I want to call it these bonus tools as well, because it's kind of three tiers. We got the fantasy golf tier, or segments, I should say. We got the fantasy golf segment. We got the prop segment. You know, those are two different ones. Those are the two main components of the membership. You got fantasy golf, and then you got the prop. But I also offer these bonus tools, which are tools that I can make available to you guys. So I do. If members start to not really use those tools that much, I don't really feel the need to have that overhead. And so I could take that away, essentially. I don't plan on doing that, but I want you to know that those are not technically included in the membership. And that being said, I am always working on updating these tools so they could become different minor nuances to the membership as well. I also want to call it the paid members chat. Okay, there is a 9to5 Discord chat, which is made available to people once they sign up to the 9to5 membership. And once you sign up, you will get access to the Discord chat as well. Click on this, there'll be a link to that as well. But that's only for 9to5 members. Now, the reason I do that is to really keep the fluff out. I want the Discord chat to be a source of actionable information for people that want to be there and people that are trying to be better. Too many times there's Discord chats out there that are just full of fluff that are just not helping people. It's just people talking. And so I really want to minimize the noise. So I have made it a private Discord chat. Again, that'll be made available to you guys once you sign up. Now, if you guys ever need to make changes to your account, billing, maybe you're coming in for the NFL season and the NFL season is over and you want to pause your membership or cancel your membership until that season comes up again. That's perfectly fine. I get it. Everyone is always trying to do stuff. You go to the little icon here, you can click on profile, membership, account, settings. You can click on any of that stuff. If you click on membership, you can see because it's my account, I don't have any active memberships going on right now. But this is where you would go to cancel membership. Okay, if you want to change your card, you can go to my wallet. They'll have your card information in there as well. Just all that stuff. Okay. And so again, you access that by going to the homepage and they'll be right there. And I do want to call it that for the write-up that I do, the weekly write-up for golf, it's always going to be on this homepage. Okay. Then all the recent write-ups for golf are going to be there as well. Okay, I wanted to call that out. And if you ever want to know how to use certain tools on the golf membership, you can click on this. But I'm also going to be covering it in this video. Same thing with the props cheat sheets as well. Okay, I'm going to be covering that in this video. Let's actually start out with the prop. All right, so once you click on the tool, you're going to be defaulted to the PrizePicks cheat sheet. And this is going to be the EV only tab. The EV only tab is going to be pulling in all the props where the average sportsbook line is going to be the exact same as the PrizePicks line. That way we can see which prop bets are going to be good EV bets. If you guys are unfamiliar with what EV is, that's expected value. Basically, anytime we have a prop bet over 54% for the edge ranking here, that's going to give us a long-term edge over PrizePicks and Underdog, mathematics. And so those are the bets that we want to be attacking. And this tool is just sorting by that. Now, I do want to call out to you guys that this tool is going to be much more of a desktop tool. You can use it on mobile. I know some iPhone users, when they try to scroll in, they do have a little bit of issue. It's not all iPhones, it's just some of them. It's kind of a weird bug. Again, I'm always trying to make updates. That's something I plan to have fixed eventually. But that's part of the nuance of this being a $10 membership. And that's something I want to touch on as well. The reason why I'm able to price it this way is because, you know, I've been making these tools for 6-7 years now where I can just keep adding on to it. You know, I'm not just starting from scratch, just random. These are tools that I developed for myself personally to be able to present data and information to the public better. And then I made those tools available for everyone. You know, it's going to be a simple and concise manner. And so with it being only $10, there are some little sacrifices that I make here and there with speed time, refresh rate as well included in there, and then a little bit usability. In all honesty, I'm trying to be honest with you guys here, but that is something that I somewhat do on purpose. Like, I have made these tools available for just $10 a month so that the public, you know, the 9 to 5 people, the average person can use these tools. There's so many memberships out there that are $40 to $200 a month that offer a quarter of what I offer in this membership. So there are little sacrifices that I make in order to keep that price as low as I can possible. That's my goal. Because when I was starting out, playing fantasy sports, the pricing was the biggest constraint in the industry. And sure, once we keep growing and growing and growing, I can probably still offer around the same price, but improve the products as I have each and every year. But I did want to call that out to you guys. Again, these are much more desktop tools as well. But yes, getting back into this tool, this does update and refresh every hour, both the PrizePicks and Underdog line. So how to go about using this tool, and all the other tools are going to operate the exact same in this tab. So we have is the average sportsbook line. This is going to be pulling in the data from several different sportsbooks, and there has to be more than one sportsbook that is pulling in that data for us to have a line. Okay. So for instance, Jacoby Wood assist is the best EV bet that we have. The average sportsbook line would have the set at 3.5. The Underdog line would have the set at 4. They have bumped it up because this line at minus 146 has a percent likelihood of 55% to hit. That is a very good EV bet. Thus, Underdog has bumped it up. PrizePicks still has it at 3.5. So that is a very big edge for us to use that prop. Now, some of you guys might be wondering what goes into this over and under line. That is going to be the average sportsbook data that I just mentioned. And we're pulling in all the averages from all the sportsbooks and putting that to one data point. And this is going to be without the juice. And if you guys don't know what juice is going to be what Vegas sportsbooks, what sportsbooks put into their lines to ensure that they're not losing money on those bets that they're putting out there. So we have to take that juice out to get an accurate representation of what the line should be. Now, you will see that some of these are not going to have projection. That's going to happen with those sports like college basketball and whatnot, where there's not as much data out there. That's just going to happen. Or for NFL, sometimes if it's like Monday and the props are out for the next week, the projection data just might not be fully updated until maybe Tuesday or Wednesday. The projection data as a whole is typically full, though, the day of the contest at around, let's say 8. Well, let's go with 10 Eastern time. Okay. But yeah, just the EV betting, that's going to be all the good prop bets that we have for that day. The Underdog cheat sheet is going to operate the exact same as that. Okay. The exact same thing. We're just taking the Underdog lines and trying to see where we have the biggest edge. So now let's go ahead and get into the basketball tab. So it's basketball season right now. NHL is going on. College basketball is going on. We got golf. MLB is going to be starting shortly. But for the basketball tab, we have a bunch of different tabs here. Okay, the first one is going to be the PrizePicks NBA prop cheat sheet. And where this is going to be a little bit different from the EV only tab is typically we are going to get some fantasy score prop bets that are in there, or we're going to get some situations where the prop line for the average sportsbook line is slightly different than what the PrizePicks line is. Like for example here, Donovan Mitchell's points prop on average across the sportsbooks is 24.9. So that tells me there's probably one or two sportsbooks that have the line a little bit lower than they should. But this is something that wouldn't naturally pop up in the EV only tab because it's a slightly different line. But a lot of times we will have fantasy score prop bets that are popping up in here as well, which can present us a big edge. Fantasy score prop bets are comprised of pulling in all the data points for that basketball player. And I'll show you guys that with college basketball because we're not getting that for NBA as I'm recording this video. So I'll show you guys that with college basketball. But it's pretty simple. Got the average sportsbook line, got the projection data. If there's an Underdog line, we have that. Then we have the PrizePicks line. Now, I do want to call it, if you click on the player's prop line and then scroll down a little bit, that'll take you to this picture. Okay, so it's basically going to be the same information, but presented to you guys in a more fun way. And we can also look at this blue data, which is going to be taking a peek at averages. It's going to be pulling in his averages and then telling us what the line should be. So this is just his pure average points scored on the season. This is going to take in his points per minute based off of his projection. So we can see he averages about 35.5 minutes, but he's projected to get 35 minutes. So that's where that's going to be a little bit different. It's projected to get 35 minutes, so it's going to be a little bit less. This comes up big with like backups that are starting. If we have a backup that typically plays 25 minutes, that's going to play 30. It's very good to see and useful to see that information. Another one is going to be looking at DVP, so defense first position. So are they in a good matchup or a bad matchup? That is something that we're looking at as well. And then the Vegas times minutes. So this is what the average sportsbook line, what they should have his prop line at based off of his projected minute. And again, this is more for like players that are getting a big bump in their minutes. We can kind of see if we are gaining an edge there. And this is how we're going to comprise the projection data. But there are a lot more NBA tabs as well. So we got the Underdog NBA only tab. And then we also had this PrizePicks NBA only Demons and Goblins tab. So first and foremost, you guys should really never use the Demons and Goblins. It is not a long-term profitable approach. The only time I really try to use these is when there is a really good prop line that pops up that I know is only going to be available for like 5-10 minutes. I'm scrambling to place bets and I just want to find the best bets that I have possible. I want to take advantage of that clear outlier line that is out there. So for example, if we were looking at this EV only sheet again, this Jacoby Wood one is going to be bumped. It's going to be bumped pretty fast. Like, I know that. A lot of people that have played this a lot know that. And we're looking at the sheet. Say you don't like any of these other ones, that's fine. That is the only time I would use a demon and goblin. Now, the nice thing about this tab, though, is that we can look at demons and goblins separately. So we take a look at the goblins. These are going to be the best goblin prop bets that we have on the day. And it gives us the percent edge. So I like to typically look at the standard props. Points, assists, and rebound. And really, the higher the number, kind of the better. So for instance, Drew Holiday point. The average Sportsbook line, 12.5 is the correct line. He's projected to get 11.6. That does worry me a little bit. And the underdog line is at 12.5. So this is about a 5-4 discount. Yeah, he should be able to hit this about 80% of the time. That to me is probably the best bet. I don't like messing around with 3-ball props. I don't really like messing around with the assists or rebounds props too much. I really just want to look at the points props. Now, the demons are going to work a little bit differently. So what you want to do with the demons is take this edge slider and flip it. Okay, so here's an interesting one. So Curry's points at 29.5. This has the under has a 53.6% chance to hit, which tells us it's about a 47% chance for the over to hit. That's a pretty good likelihood. And so really kind of, if I'm ever using a demon prop, it's more for game stacking. So like for instance, we got Curry and then we got Kuminga here that are popping up as pretty decent. You know, Kuminga has about a 45% chance to get his over of 20.5 points. You know, that's a decent edge that we are getting there. But to me, this is like, all right, we want to game stack this game. I think this game is going to be a higher scoring game than what Vegas thinks. That's fine, but that's the way I'd go about using. And really, I only want to target ones that have the edge at less than 60, which is going to be a lot of them, but this is not a long-term solution to profitability, just as an FYI. So we continue on. We got the underdog sheet, which is going to operate the exact same as the PrizePicks sheet, okay? There will be little nuances in here like these blocked 0.6 to 0.5. Guys, don't mess with these ones. Just in full honesty, when it's 0.5, just don't mess with those. Or even these ones where it's 1.5 to 2. This is being valued as a push. And so what I mean by that is the average sportsbook line for Kawhi Leonard's turnovers is 1.5. This is minus 177. So this has a 55%. This is the way I look at this. This has a 55% chance to be a push. Now, the under is going to be slightly favored over the over, let's say by 5%. That's the way I look at it, is when we have a prop like this where they have bumped it up to an even number, they're saying that this is most likely to be a push. So take whatever this line is here. Let's say this is 55.1% and compare it against a 50% line. Obviously 50%, literally a 50-50, how the line will go. This is telling us it's a 55% likely to be a push, but if the data had to choose one, it would say about it has a 5.15% chance for the under to hit versus the over to hit. Again, don't target those ones. Those are not good. But I did want to call that out to you guys. Then let's get into this. So this is something I've been working on. I know not that many people use it, but I do think it is a useful tool. And the way to look at this tool here is going to be, we are comparing the DraftKings line versus the average sportsbook lines. Okay, so for instance, let's look at Jonathan Kuminga block. So let's start with this. The DK line is 0.5. Okay, the projection is 1. That's great. Units 1, this would be what you would win if you bet the opposite of what the data is suggesting here. And that might sound different to some people here, but let's look at it. So the reason why this is being pulled in, and so for this example, let's say if you wanted to bet his under minus 160, because, and this is a little bit confusing, I get it, but I'll get into how this works a little bit better in a second here. The average sportsbook line has his block set at 0.7. Now they're still going to be favoring the under there, but the line is a little bit different. So there is an edge there, but because the line's different, it doesn't exactly make sense to bet the under here. Because the average sportsbook line is still favoring the under heavily, but at 0.7, the better bet would be to do the over. But let's get into a little bit more, because that's not how I like to use. How I would go about using this tool is click this. This is the first thing I would do. Prop line is the same. That's what I want to see. Where are the prop lines going to be the same? And then we're going to get a better indication of which prop bets we should be wanting to go in on. And this is going to be sorted by edge. I don't like this matters, don't get me wrong, but what I'm really looking at here is I'm going to be looking at these lines right here. Buddy Hield. So the DK percent is 52% likelihood for his rebounds at 3.5. The average sportsbook line is giving him about a 50% chance. So this would appear that DraftKings is slightly overvaluing him. So if we go into this, the over has a minus 125 to hit. So if you were to bet the under here, you are actually getting an okay edge here because the average sportsbook line is giving him a 50-50, whereas DraftKings is saying no, he has a 52% chance to get his over 3.5 reason. So thus the 9-to-5 tag would be the under because there's a discrepancy there. That is where we are getting our edge, is going to be betting the under. But let's go ahead and move on into the other tools here. So this one's kind of a weird tool. It's a work in progress. I have it in there just in case people want to use it. So let's say we wanted to take a peek at the Buddy Hield rebounds prop basically in a different way. Well, this is what we can do. So we can see the under rebounds is set at minus 112 on average. And it's the lines at the point line is at 3.5. Okay. The over is at minus 118 on average at 3.5. Okay. So it's just another way of looking at the data. So you can really choose anyone in here. It's not DraftKings. Again, this is a work in progress tool. This goes back to if I can add in something, I always want to, but it's just another way of looking at the average lines that we were getting. Let's go ahead and jump into college basketball. So I mentioned I'd be going over the fantasy points. So typically speaking, the fantasy scores are going to be the biggest edge that we have on a day. Now today is Sunday. College basketball, there typically isn't that much going on, but we can typically get some big prop line differences in college basketball via fantasy score. And this kind of operates the same as like almost a Taco Tuesday. So looking at, we can just sort by prop line difference. And we're going to see some here, off by 1 for points and assists, points, rebounds, and assists. But let's say we flip this, we're going to see that we have 2 pretty good fantasy score props. Like it should never be more than 2 for a prop line difference between it. So we're seeing Jameer Young fantasy score here. So Underdog has this at 39.35 for his fantasy score line. It should not be that high. PrizePicks has it set at 36.5. Now the projection data likes it at 38. The average sportsbook line likes them at 36.4. What I'm seeing is that the Underdog line is probably a little bit too high. That's the outlier. And that's how I like to use this. Find the outliers in the data. Same thing here with Richmond. Okay, so the projection data really doesn't like him. Has it set at 25.5. Okay, the average sportsbook line would have this set at 30.2. Now, I do want to call out here that this might be confusing to some people. So one, I want to call out that the projection data does not have a difference in the percentage. That is just there for us to gauge whether we like a line or not. Okay, a lot of people get confused by that. I probably should have lied with that a little bit earlier. Hopefully you guys are watching the whole video, but let's call this out. So the average sportsbook line is at 30.2, but they are favoring the over of that line 53%. Okay, so because the line's at 30.2, that line would be 53% likely to hit. But we're comparing against the PrizePicks line, which is at 31.5. So the over is still slightly favored there, about 50.61, but not that big. Again, though, the outlier seems to be that Underdog is a little bit too high. That's how I like to use this tool. Now, a lot of the times you can do something that's called middling, where you bet the lines both ways. And these are almost good examples of this. I mean, this would be Jameer Young, where we can see that the PrizePicks line is right in the middle of both the average sportsbook line and the projection data. So you could bet the over there, but the under line on Underdog is the much better bet. And so again, that's just a way that I like to go about using it. Typically speaking, for college basketball, we're going to get some pretty big edges in terms of fantasy score. And then the tool is going to operate, again, the exact same for basketball. So let's go ahead and get into NHL. NHL is a little bit different, guys, because there's one step that you have to do. And I just leave this in there so everyone can see the lines that are coming in. But the first thing you want to do when you get into the NHL tab is use this slider and basically set it to 0 both ways. And what that's going to do is it's going to filter the data so we are only getting lines that are going to be exactly the same. That's what we want to look at. And so the way I like to use this, again, we're using the projection data as really just a guidance, especially with NHL props where PrizePicks and Underdog are so quick to respond to a line that's an outlier where they're wrong. They'll just instantly bump it to a push. This one's not bad. So we can see the average sportsbook line has a set at 1.5. They're giving it about a 53% likelihood to hit. So the Underdog line, the PrizePicks line, because it's not at 54%, they're probably not going to bump it. But the projection data likes that at 2.3. So it's not a bad bet. It's not great. On a slate where it's a tight slate, I'd be fine using that. It's not one that I particularly want to go out of my way to target. Now let's go ahead and get to the golf props. Now, again, there's going to be, during the NFL season, there's going to be NFL tabs. That's going to operate the same way. MLB is going to be slightly different. And I'm going to work on putting how-to videos either here for each tool, or it's going to be at the bottom, just as an FY. So like the MLB one, I'll have that in there. as well, because the hitting fantasy score for MLB, just real quickly, that was a very big edge for us, as well as the pitching fantasy score was a big edge for us. Basically, a lot of the time, the hitting fantasy score or the pitching score was off by 2 compared to the average sportsbook line. And so again, I'll call that out in a separate video. Let's go ahead and get into the golf props. So the golf props are a little bit different. So I just went ahead and everything is based off the average sportsbook line. For golf, we really don't get that many sportsbook lines for any prop. Okay, so I want to call that out. So the average sportsbook line is actually going to be taking how the course played. Okay, looking at the average for that category on the course over the past 4 years. And so for people that might not be familiar with golf, a lot of the times these golfers, it's a week, each week is a different tournament. And a lot of the times the tournaments will be played on the same course over several years. And so we get a pretty good sample size with the data of what to expect for said category. Like for this tournament this week, the average birdies or better made over the past few years was around 3.7. Now, this line is also taken in consideration the underdog. Here, I'll use this as an example. The underdog line and the PrizePicks line as well. That is going into the average sportsbook line. This is also taken into account live data for the tournament. So after round 1, there's 4 rounds for a golf tournament. This will be updating as well to see how the tournament is playing that year, because some years the course will play a little bit easier than expected. Some years the course will play a little bit more difficult than expected. So this is something that we'll be updating throughout the tournament as well. But so it's not like essentially an average sportsbook line, but we are comparing it against PrizePicks and Underdog, which are sportsbooks in my view as well. So the projection data is a little bit different. The projection data is going to be taking into account the average sportsbook line, taking into account the PrizePicks and Underdog line, but also taking into account how the golfer performs in that stat category compared to the field. And then that's how we're going to get a projection. So for instance, Cameron Young is a little bit more of a birdie maker than is Ming-Woo Lee. Thus, his birdie or better percentage, Cameron Young's, is going to be more than Ming-Woo Lee. Okay. And so again, the edge is a little bit different here because we're not comparing it against the average sportsbook line. That's why all these are basically going to be 0. 0 for, the percent edge and line and whatnot, because we're not getting them. So the edge is a little bit different. It's a calculation that I have made so that this can operate the same as the other, and we can get a good indication of what a good prop bet is or not. But the thing with golf is a lot of the times you just want to bet on the course and how it's going to play. And sometimes we will get these big outliers. So for instance, again, we go to the prop line difference tab. We sort by, let's see, more. David Skins right now. This should not happen. It should never be more than 1. And we also have it with Shane Lowry here as well. But the prop line difference here is 1.5. This to me tells me that we could probably do a middling here. Again, bet the under on PrizePicks, bet the over on Underdog. Golf is a pretty predictable sport, especially in terms of golfers hitting averages. Now, a golfer can have a bad round here and there. That's going to happen for sure. But typically speaking, it's pretty predictable. And so like this is a decent edge on both sides. Now, what the data isn't showing us, it's actually telling us to bet the under for the PrizePicks, pretty heavily, 53%. With golf, there is sometimes weather that we need to pay attention to and pin location. Again, golf is a weird nuance. So to me, following golf, I actually think the better bet today would be Skins for over his underdog line. But again, a good middling opportunity. But in a vacuum, this is going to be a great tool to use. And I want to call that out. The other thing I want to call out as well is going to be the birdie or better matchup, because this is a little different as well. So the average sportsbook line, I'm going to use Russell Henley and Ricky Fowler as an example. So looking at right now, it's going to be the leading player, Russell Henley, and that's going to be the tag of what you should bet over birdies or better versus Ricky Fowler. So this is going to operate a little bit differently. The average sportsbook line for this is actually going to be Ricky Fowler's projection for his birdie or better. So Ricky is projected at 4.0 because it's birdie or better matchup. Essentially, the line that we're getting in comparison, the sportsbook line would be Ricky Fowler's birdie. So that's what we're looking at there. And then all the other data is going to operate exactly the same as birdie or better would. So Russell Henley projected 4.1. The essential PrizePicks line would be 4.12. The underdog line for Russell Henley's birdies is 4.5. Okay, so this is a decent edge that we are getting. Not great though, 51%. But that's how to go about using that. And then again, Underdog is a little bit different because they are going to offer us some fantasy score props here. And this is something I would love to add in there for NHL. Again, I'm always trying to work on adding more tools for you guys while keeping that price the same. And again, that's something I'm able to do by having the data and whatnot set up the way that I do. So I do want to call it that they do have fantasy score, which is comprised a little bit differently. But I do think that I actually like the fantasy score ones the most because you're kind of betting on how the course is going to play as a whole. With golf, a lot of the times golfers will maybe make a double bogey instead of a bogey, or make an eagle instead of a birdie, which could ruin birdie or better or matchup props or strokes props. Like that random nuance stuff is going to happen. But I think long-term profitability approach, I think fantasy score is going to be the best one. And so I just want to call that out. Another thing that I want to work on adding in here is going to be taking the lines that are given from PrizePicks to make a PrizePicks fantasy score projection in comparison to how Underdog values fantasy score. And so if that's confusing to anyone, this is the formula for Underdog's fantasy score. This is what they use. And so what I want to do is I want to take the PrizePicks data that we have to make a fantasy score line to be able to compare it against the Underdog line. And that's something, again, I'm working on as well. And so because there are so many other sports that PrizePicks and Underdog both offer, and because a lot of them don't have like the sportsbook data that we have, or it's not data that I can access right now, again, while keeping the membership as low as I can, right? Like I could include esports data. That would honestly triple the membership price. There's just not enough people that want that. So like, why would I include that? But what we can do here is that we typically notice that we are getting some decent prop line differences from a lot of these sports. So right now, today, between FIFA and tennis, we are getting some okay prop line differences. Not great, but we are getting some. And so for instance, total games for tennis, this is off by 1. It's just another way to go about looking at stuff. We'll have esports props in there. We'll have tennis. We'll have FIFA. We'll have stuff like that. All right. So that does it for the props side of it, right? There's a lot that goes into it. Now let's go in and get into the golf side of it. Again, it's the deep dive membership overview video. So let's go in and get into the golf side of it. I already showed you guys the prop tools. That's going to work well. Let's go ahead and get into the cheat. So first and foremost, guys, to get to the cheat sheet, you go to the golf tab and click on cheat sheet. Okay. I want to call it that there is the mobile cheat sheet as well. I think a lot of people like using this because it's just more straightforward and you can use it on your mobile cheat sheet or on your mobile phone, and it should operate a lot better. Now, I do want to call out, like if you use this on your mobile phone, it's going to be better. And this is something I actually want to probably make available for PrizePicks as well, but it's going to operate exactly the same. So you're going to have the cheat sheet just straightforward. You click on the player and you can actually see their data points for that week. Scroll up, scroll down, and then you can just click over and do the exact same thing. But this is just going to be their model rank, how they rank out that week. And then we have the course history tab, which is going to be their last 4 starts. We're going to have the recent form in there. Okay, that's going to be their last 15 starts, their made cut percent, and all that stuff in there. We're going to have their last 5 averages and whatnot. That's all going to be in there. Okay. Then we look at stat fit. That's going to be taking the key stats for that week and looking at how they look as a play that week. So we got the key stats right here, what we're looking at that week, and then how that golfer ranks in that key stat category. We got the betting page here, which tells us all the percent likelihoods for that to happen. We got the ownership, and I'll get into this in a little bit here. And then we got the specialist, which is just taking all the unique characteristics for that week's tournament and telling you guys what's going on. So again, that can be used for mobile. Now let's go ahead and get into this cheat sheet. It's going to offer you guys a lot more usability. So I want to call out that with this cheat sheet, what you can do, if it's not in focus for you guys, like if it's too big, come down to the slider right here and just set it to like 100, 94, whatever. You can set it to whatever you want and it should fit your screen much better. Okay. So with the cheat sheet, my goal is to give you guys the information that you need for that week's tournament without offering you guys too much information. A lot of the times in fantasy golf, people just love to put out fluff, stuff that doesn't matter. Basically, my Twitter feed throughout the week is filled with stuff that doesn't matter for that week's tournament. And it is crazy. It's mind numbing. And so I've tried to curate this cheat sheet as much as possible with only the relevant information for that week's tournament. So what we're looking at is going to be the last 4 years course history for that tournament. Now it's set at H1 to H4 because some tournaments do not play on the same course. That's very rare, but that does occur. So instead of me having to manually go in and update this to, let's say 2023, 2022, 2021, whatever the years, and then if there's a different course where we're going to maybe have to use course history comp course history instead, I don't want to have to do that. So again, we're looking at the last 4 years course history, which are going to be denoted by H4, H2, H3. And you guys can see it right here. These are going to be the tournaments that we're looking at for those categories, right? And we're looking at the last 4 years course history because that's when course history matters the most. You could look at the past 5 years, but after that, the course history data statistically is basically irrelevant. Now, there's always going to be outliers. Like if a golfer is 10 for 10 missing cuts and he's coming in with great form, yeah, that's going to be a good golf play regardless, but he's going to be popping up as a good play regardless anyway. So there's no point in looking at it past that anyway. And then from there, we look at the key stats. So the key stats, guys, the way we come up with the key stats is going to be going to the course data page. And this is something that a majority of you never have to go to. And so again, I try to make this page as simple as possible. So right now, this week, we have the Cognizant class, which formerly was known as the Honda class. So we're going to look at the past starts at the Honda Classic, which data points were the most significant. And so we can see all the unique stuff. So course name is PGA National. The average cut is 1.8 over par. The average win score is about 10 under par. We got a Florida course. Style course is Parkland style. It's a full event. We can see the par, all that stuff. And so we have it broken down by years. You can see all the years going into the database for this tournament. But really what I want to see is which stats were the most predictive in terms of golfers playing well. Which stats led to golfers playing well at that tournament, okay? And so I love including the missed cut stats because this is something that a lot of people don't do in the industry. A lot of people just look at these winning stats only. They're like, all right, how do I end up on the winner? Instead of like looking at the full sample size. It's just a weird way people go about doing it where they're only focused on the winner rather than focused on players making the cut, top 10, top 5, and all that stuff. So I want all the data points going into this. And so what we can see for this specific tournament is that, as always, and these are some stats that always pop up, strokes gained tee to green. Golfers that struggled there missed the cut. No shock. Golfers that did well, strokes gained tee to green, like we're to win, right? And so this is how they ranked in that tournament. So golfers that won, this is how they ranked in that tournament. Golfers that missed the cut, this is how they ranked. So strokes gained total, again, no shock there. I mean, that makes perfect. But really, what my goal here in this tool, again, I really like to curate the data as much as possible. And so strokes gained total, strokes gained tee to green, I really don't care about those two in terms of trying to find key stat data for that week's tournament, because those are core stats that I look at every single week, and everyone looks at every single week, as you should. What I really want to look at is going to be the other 4 strokes gained stats. Okay, which one popped up the most for that week's tournament? Typically speaking, it's going to be strokes gained approach. Occasionally, it's going to be strokes gained off the tee, or strokes gained around the green, or strokes gained putting. So if we can find a key stat like that to look at, I want to look at it. Now we're also going to see like stuff like this, 200 plus, which is like long iron accuracy or wedge scoring. Was it a course in which golfers had to be really accurate with their irons, or was it a course in which a lot of the shots ended up being around the green? And so for this tournament, we actually see that's more of a wedge fest, especially in terms of golfers at top 10 and also 1. So maybe we're looking at that. Was it a course in which was a bomb and gouge course where golfers were driver heavy, or was it a course in which golfers had to hit the fairway a little bit more frequently? And across the data points, especially in terms of golfers that made the cut, we can see good drive percentage was much more of a better stat to look at than driving distance this week. And if you want to look at a particular year in general, we can look at it this way. But again, this is how we're coming up with the key stat data. So we're just going across the board and looking at it. So again, I was able to come up and see that, all right, ball striking, total driving, golfers that are accurate, but also having some distance, they tend to play well here. Birdie to bogey ratio or birdie or better percentage. What I want to see is just what type of tournament was it? Was it a course where golfers just need to make a lot of birdies? Or was it a course in which golfers need to make some birdies but couldn't be making that many bogeys? That's what we're looking at there. And then I use that to make these data points. Okay, and so that's how we come up with the key stats. But again, we're looking at the 4 unique stats for that week's tournament, but also we're looking at strokes gained total, strokes gained tee to green, as well over the golfers past 7 start. And why 7 starts? Well, that is when the data starts to fall off in terms of predictability. 7 starts, and that's what also goes into recent form, by the way. I'm showing you guys the last 4 here because that's what people would like to look at them. But it's actually the last 7 where the data is the most significant, because 3 starts, 4 starts, it doesn't give a full sample of a golfer's downside. And that's something that people just don't pay attention to. You need to have 7 starts in there because that will also factor in the downside. If you just look at the past 3 starts, you might end up on golfers that maybe just got hot for 3 weeks, but in the long term, just aren't that good of golfers and will regress back to their mean. And then anything after 7 starts, it becomes a little bit irrelevant because golfers do get better. And so you don't want to be looking too far back. So last 7 starts. But for this, I'm just showing you guys the last 4 starts and their made cuts and their made cut percent for that tournament. This is also going to include the average sportsbook line data in there. So it's going to be my own formula and then also the average sportsbook data. So we got the specialist stat. The specialist stat is going to be looking at all the unique characteristics for that week's tournament, and I'll get into that. We got course history here. Again, I'll get into that. We got the stat rank. Again, I'll get into that. And then we got recent form as well, and we'll get into that. But I want to stick with this page real quick as well because there are a little different nuances into this tool as well. So people might be looking at this and think it's somewhat standard. It is. So you can sort by any player that you want. You can sort by a data tag. So the data tag is essentially 9to5's AI, if you will. I know it's a buzzword, so let's use it. Of showing you guys how to properly value a player. And this is going to be based off of historical data over the past 2 years. golfers that were most likely to make the cut or pay off their price tags and whatnot. So for this week's tournament, we actually did not have any core plays. A core play is going to be a golfer that's coming in, checking all the boxes. A core play is going to be a golfer that we do not need to worry about mostly in terms of making the cut. That also is going to provide some upside. So we didn't have any core plays. We did have some high exposure plays, and this week is not a good look. So the data really liked Eric Cole. Eric Cole sucked. Everyone did though. Okay. From there, mid exposure, a little bit more. We had a much more open field for the Honda Cognizant class. And so that's going to tell us kind of all those plays that meet that data threshold to be a mid exposure play. And then that's going to continue on. Okay. We also have the outright tag, which is going to be golfers that, based off of, again, the last few years data, which golfers were most likely to win. And this is based off of a 70 percentile. So, I look at the last 2 years winners and pull in the most relevant data points for golfers that won, like which golfers in the 70th percentile for those stats, course history, recent form, which of them made the cut, and then I compare that against the golfers that are in the field, and we are able to come up with that. So Chris Kirk was that one golfer. You can also sort by birthplace, location, local ties. Like really, I'm just trying to, like for Florida, this tournament's in Florida, you type in Florida, and you can just see all the golfers in the field that have Florida ties. So you have to click on all of them, but that's a way of doing that. But also, let's talk about this. So we got the data slicer. So here we go. So the data slicer will pop up for you guys when you click on it. And so let's say you just want to sort by golfers that have made more than 2 starts at this tournament. Okay, you do that, you click out of it, and so we can see all the golfers have made multiple starts at this tournament. Maybe you just want to look at course history in terms of golfers that have made start. You can do that. Let's say you don't want to look at that. Let's say you just want to look at only golfers that rank top 63, whatever, because the slider's there, in recent form over their last start. You can do that. Golfers that are not coming in making the cut, you can do that. That's what this tab is for. Course history, rank specialist. You can sort by salary. Let's say if you're just trying to find a specific salary point, let's say golfers under 7K. There we go. Which are the best values? So you can do that as well. That's why that tool is there. All right. So now I want to show you guys another part of the tool as well. Let's say you want to look at Rory, but you want to look at his player profile. You click on him in the sheet and you pop him up right here. That's going to pull up his player profile for that. So it's just going to put all the data points into that week in there for you guys. Now, if you guys want to look at more data points than I have pulled up here, you could. That's perfectly fine. But I have it straight into the data points array. Let's say you just want to look at recent form. You click on recent form. Let's just say you want to look at key stats. You click on key stat. But also, let's say you didn't want to look at these data points that are in there right now. Don't do this, but there's so many other data points that are in there. You can look at betting odds. Let's say you want to just look at betting odds. You could do that. If you want to just look at one data point, select all, and then deselect all. You can look at just his birdie or better percentage. Okay, you want to look at his birdie better percentage, how he compares over the last 20 to 5 starts. You can look at that as well. Okay, again, I like to keep it curated as possible, but I get that everyone likes to look at data like that as well. This is another way to go about using that. Okay, so click out of him once you're done looking at that data point. So that kind of does it for the cheat sheet. There are some tournaments where I'll have the DP Tour in there as well. What you do is you just click on DP Tour, and then that would filter the data for the DP Tour. So now let's go ahead and get into course history. So guys, for course history, it's actually, in terms of like relevance, the biggest relevant data point for course history is golfers that have made a start at a tournament. Now, obviously, if they played well at that course, that's going to matter better. But the biggest data point in terms of statistical relevance was golfers that have made a start at a tournament. They tend to do better than golfers that have not made a start, which does make sense. So what I like to do is I like to look at golfers that, one, have made a start, but have made multiple starts. So I want to look at golfers that have made multiple starts at a tournament to get a proper data sample size. So we're looking at golfers that have made more than 2 starts. That's what we're looking at here. And I might add in like more years than this just for people to look at. I kind of hesitate to do that because, again, that could lead people down the wrong road. And I really want my data to be concentrated on stuff that matters for that week's tournament. And so that's kind of the weird balancing act that I had to do over the years, especially with a lot more fluff-related content out there that's been really catching on. And so it's tough in that regard. But we go ahead and look at recent form here. So recent form is a fun, easy tool to use. You can look at golfers that made the most cuts. And that's going to change for Jaeger. He missed a cut this week. But you can look at that. You can look at their recent form over the past 5 starts if you just want to look at that. You can look at over their past 10 starts, over their past 15 starts. You can look at how they rank in those categories as well. You can look at their made cut percent for that week. Yeah, just look at whatever you guys want to in terms of recent data points that we have. But the recent form rank is a little bit different because we are including made cut percents into this. And so some of the golfers are not in this right now because, well, this is live data as well, just as FYI. So I'm doing this on Sunday, but yeah, you guys get the point. Let's go ahead and move on into stat fit. So stat fit, again, is just a way of looking at this week's key stats and using that in there. Again, I kind of leave it open to you guys. If you guys want to look at a certain player, you can look at that, but you can also look at more stats than the ones that are presented. Let's say you think that, I don't know, you want to look at total driving over the past 5 as well, or something like that. You want to look at strokes gained over the last 5 as well. You could put that in there and then it's going to pull in that data for you guys as well to maybe see if you wanted to maybe have a little bit different of a stat rank for you guys to see. This is how you go about doing that. You can just add in more data points into that stat. Okay. That's why I leave that open to you guys. All right. And then the specialist data is a fun sheet, I would say. So we're going to be looking at all the unique characteristics for that week's tournament. So you could look at green speeds, like golfers that play the best on those projected green speeds, green width. There's basically everything you'd ever want and more. You could look at scoring. Typically, this is a hard scoring track. So you could look at that. And it's going to be defaulted to that. So, whatever the tournament average is for that. So on average, this is a hard scoring track. These are the golfers that produce the best on hard scoring tracks. You could look at course designer. You could look at location. You could look at weather hazards, the amount of water hazards in play. You could look at weather. If it's a week in which the weather is supposed to be really bad, you could look at that. So that's all there. And the reason why I have this as a separate data point is because people tend to go in on this a little bit too much than they should. I've looked over this over the past years to see if all right, does strokes gained putting on a certain surface really matter for a golfer's ability to play a lot better? And again, there's always going to be random outliers, but in a vacuum, it didn't matter that much. It does matter, don't get me wrong. That's why I want to have it in the specialist data. But in a vacuum, to have just that data point, it didn't really make sense. So that's why I want to look at all the other data points that might matter. Like if golfers are not good out of bunkers, we can look at golfers that struggle in courses at bunkers or lots of water hazards or specific course designers. That's why I want to have it like that as well. All right, so that does it for the cheat sheet side of it. Now let's go ahead and get into some of the other tools that we have. Okay, so there's always gonna be the tournament write-up. That's gonna be there for you guys. The lineup builder, it's probably not gonna be populating right now because the tournament's going on, but I put some dummy data in there for you guys. So looking at it right now, like this tool, it does take some practice, but really the biggest thing that you guys want to do is really not mess with it too much. Sure, if there's golfers that you want to be on more, just simply up their projection a little bit more. So this is set for round 4 projections right now, just as an FYI, not the full slate. But let's say you really like Cameron Young for round 4. You want to pull him into all your builds. You double click on him and say, raise his projection a little bit more. You are telling the data that you want to be on. But the way I like to go about using this is I like to just do my settings, 3 unique players, 35% max exposure. And I just like to generate it, see what the data likes, okay? I'll click on players, and I'll see if there's any golfers that are outliers in terms of golfers that I want to be on. Let's say, for instance, I don't think Keith Mitchell's going to do whatever. What we could do, go back into the players, click on show usage, we do that, and it's going to be sorted by the ownership already. Let's say I didn't want to have 40% exposure to Keith Mitchell. Let's set this to 20. I'm fine with doing that. Another thing we can do as well, a lot of the times there's going to be core plays that you want to be on. So what you could do is player group. So a lot of times I like to have my core plays and high exposure plays. I want at least 1 or 2 of those golfers in all my builds. So what you could do is I want at least, or exactly, but let's do at least 2 of said golfers in a build. And I'm just going to randomly click on these golfers here just to do it. Whatever. Let's say those were my core plays for that week. We click on save. And then when we generate this again, it should work. Now, I do want to call it because these golfers are so high priced, it's probably not going to work. So yeah, that's not going to work because those golfers are too high priced. But I think if we do at least 1, that'll work. And I will say, guys, if you are doing the player groups, you probably don't want to do the rules first. Do the player groups first. So like for this instance, it should work, or it does work when I don't have any rules set in there. So at least 2 of those golfers in all my builds, that will work when I don't have any rules. And so the reason why I say that is because let's say like Kevin used a golfer you didn't want to be on that much. What you would do is you would then go into here, show usage, and then you would adjust his ownership to what you would want it to be at. Now that's because we're only doing 100, or we're only doing 20 lineups. If you guys are doing 150 lineups, it should work fine. So like for this example, I did 150 lineups on just 3 unique players. And the reason I did that is because I didn't want to cap the exposure. Again, we can kind of manually go in and correct that. But when we do it this way, we're going to see that by doing 150 lineups, the exposures aren't going to be that great. It's going to be spread out. What you could do as well is you could set randomness as well. Typically, I only do about 10% randomness. Like I think that's fine. If you guys want to worry about salary or ownership as well, you could set a max to that as well. Typically 90% exposure is fine. It's a good sample to have in there. That's a easy way to go about using this for mass building. And I do want to call it, this is designed for 150 lineups. It's not designed for, that being said, showdown wise, you're perfectly fine using it for 20. So let's go ahead and get into more tools here. I went into the leaderboard and showdown tools. So right now we're looking at the leaderboard. This is just a fun way to look at how players are doing that week, maybe how chalk's doing. It's just a fun tool to look at. Everyone likes looking at the leaderboard tool, or just looking at how golfers are doing. It's fun. So it's just a way to look at data. If you guys want to use it, go for it. If not, that's fine. You can also click on the Showdown tab. So the Showdown tab is a great tool. So what you can do is you want to select the round that the golfers are going into to get a good representation of how they're going to play. So a lot of the times we select the round. With it being a cut, we want to just look at the golfers that made the cut. So we're going to pull those golfers in. And then the breakdown. This is what data point you want to look at. So naturally we have in win rank, showdown rank, projected fantasy points for that round, their round scoring average. This is going to be their data point for that round on the season, on the PGA Tour season. Then we have regression. And so some people get confused by regression. Regression is just looking at a golfer's likelihood to play better or worse than they did in the previous round. Okay. So if they have a good regression rank, that means they're likely to play better in that upcoming round. If they had a bad regression rank, that's a way of looking at it. All right, they outproduce their likelihood by a significant margin. Win rank is going to be my 9to5 way of showing you guys which golfers are the best or the most likely golfers to win based off of how they are projected to play that round. So it takes that round specific data point, and that's really what we're concentrating is how they're projected to do that round, and then comparing it against their place to see which golfers are likely to projected to play well. You could just look at Showdown. You could just look at projected fantasy points. But yeah, Showdown rank is just going to be pretty straightforward, telling you guys who the best plays are for that round. And round 4 is a little bit different. I don't like playing round 4 Showdown because we're taking the finishing position into consideration then. You can also look at live strokes gained. Let's get into that. So here we go. A lot of people just like to look at strokes gained putting, but I do want to call it that field stat rank, which is also going to be their live stat rank. So the live stats are going to be how they're playing for that tournament, which is also the field stat rank. So what you want to do instantly is you want to set this to 1 as that's going to pull in all the golfers that have data points on the season, and we're not going to be filtering golfers that have 0. So we're looking at that. And so we can look at, let's say we want to look at strokes gained putting. A lot of people like looking at this, so you can see sort by live minus season. So you can see which golfers live maybe have putted worse than they have compared to the season. So someone like Billy Horschel is expected to putt better than he had. Okay. You can also flip that around and see which golfers maybe have putted much better than expected. Okay. So it's a lot of people like looking at that. It's not a bad way to look at it, but you can also do it with strokes gained total. That'd be another way of looking at regression. It's a fun tool. You guys can look at it that way. It's also a way of maybe if you guys are someone that does prop betting, let's say like greens and regulation, you can see, oh, this guy struggled with greens and regulation, or this guy did well greens and regulation. That's not expected to happen again. Let's take advantage of this low line. So 3-ball bets, this is not going to be completely accurate right now because again, golfers are playing right now and there's only 2 golfers in there. I really like using this tool for round 1 and round 2. Because we typically are getting 3 golfers. And again, it's taking their round rank, which I don't think like Vegas does really here. So this has been a nice edge. And typically because you are getting odds that are like 2-1 or 2.3 to 1. And sometimes the golfers will tie and it won't be a full payout, but I think this is great. So if you wanted to just look at like the Rory group, again, it's only 2 golfers here. Click on the Rory group and you can see how it compares. So you guys will see this isn't a full 100%. Well, because the other percent is the likelihood for that to tie. Okay. So we'll go ahead and get into the ownership leverage as well. Again, I'm doing this video on Sunday, not going to be the most accurate for you guys. So this tool I set up because a lot of times people talk about ownership, someone being too high owned or too low owned and really not have any actionable information behind it. They're just saying word. And so I wanted to put data points behind it. And so I created this tool for you guys. So this will take into consideration the projected ownership for a golfer based off of several of projections across the industry. Then we can compare that against how Vegas thinks the golfer is going to do and how the 9to5 data thinks the golfer is going to do. That's how we come out with the leverage rank tool, data points. Okay. So from there, you can just look at how the top golfers are doing and compare it against like who you want to be on. Like for instance, Sungjae compared to Ming Woo Lee. We can see Sungjae terrible bet or terrible play compared to Ming Woo Lee, and especially in terms of ownership. Rory compared to Cameron Young. Cameron Young's the better play when you're looking at ownership. So that's a good way to go about doing it. You can also just scroll down here and see which golfers are the most projected over-owned golfers on the slate. And what I typically like to use this part of the tool for is look at golfers like this that might be double digits, because a lot of the times this is just comparing how golfers are projected to play and then comparing how high owned they are compared to how they should be. Are they over-owned? And a lot of the times when they're under 10%, it really doesn't matter that much. And so we look at Bazuna, who has struggled. He's a golfer that you probably would want to fade. And then on the flip side of that, we can look at golfers that are coming in under-owned. Now, Jaeger missed the cut. Eric Cole missed the cut, but for the most part, this was pretty good actionable information in terms of leverage. Like Alex Noren was a clear-cut ownership leverage play this week because he's coming in at under 10%. He shouldn't have been. So we see this return value finishing position. People were valuing him as a top 40 finisher, which was just wrong. Whereas Bazuna, they're valuing him as a top 15 finisher. Like that is just wrong. And so we have all those data points that are coming in here, and we can see like when a golfer is under-owned, properly owned, compared to how they are projected to play. It's just another way to go about looking at the data. And then we do have some of these underdog tools in there as well. That doesn't really matter too much. If you guys want to take advantage of the best ball stuff, by all means do that. It's pretty straightforward. I did a separate video on this. We got the Discord chat in there, and then there is the how-to section as well. It's probably something I need to update as well, but that's going to do it. That is the 9to5 membership overview. It's a deep dive video here. Again, I'm always trying to work on stuff, so it's tough for me to do this video because I'm always updating tools and whatnot. So if you guys are watching this and a tool doesn't operate the exact same way as when I'm recording this video and showing you guys it, that's why I'm just always working on stuff to update it for you guys. So hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Hopefully this helps you guys out using the tools as well. Again, if you guys want to sign up and you haven't signed up before, head on over to plans and pricing. It is available for $10 a month. That is going to be all. Thank you guys for watching. Appreciate it. Give a like and subscribe. And as always, let's keep cashing.